See, the thing about Jacob is he didn't just wrestle God this one night. Jacob had literally been wrestling since he came out of the womb. Like, literally. It says in Genesis 25 that as Rebekah, his mother, was pregnant with Jacob and his twin brother Esau, that, like, literally they were wrestling inside her stomach while she was pregnant with them. And even when you get to the point where, like, she's having them and giving birth to them, literally Jacob comes out, like, holding on to Esau's foot, like, as he's coming out or whatever. And so this is how Jacob actually gets his name Jacob, because it actually means heel grabber or deceiver. Like, that's literally how he got his name. Can you imagine your name meaning deceiver? Like, who names their kid that? Who would name their kid something that bad? And so Jacob goes on and just, like, through his whole life, he's super deceitful. He's, like, got it out for Esau. And so he goes on to trick Esau out of his birthright, out of just giving him soup. Because, like, there's one day that Esau is coming in from working, and he's, like, super hungry, super thirsty. And so Jacob is like, hey, if you give me your birthright, like, I'll give you my soup. Which, if you know what a birthright is, like, that is not an even trade whatsoever. Then he goes on to trick his blind father Isaac into giving him a blessing that was Esau's. And so because of these things, he had to run for his life from Esau, and he became a runner who also wrestled. And so he spent the next 20 years running from Esau and ends up in Haran, and he's working for his uncle Laban, where he goes on and he marries these two women, and he becomes very successful, has a lot of money, but he still cannot find peace. Can't find any peace at all. And so he finds himself in this moment where we just read in Genesis 32, he finally finds himself heading back to home where he had come from, and he hears that Esau is coming to meet him with 400 men. Like, imagine how scared he was in that moment. And so at this moment, Jacob comes to this place where he's scared, he's alone, and he's completely out of tricks. And this is where God shows up. And it's the same way in our life a lot of times. When we've come to this moment where, like, we're alone, we're scared, we're out of tricks, we can't depend on our strength anymore, this is a lot of times where God shows up. And so in Genesis 32:24, it says, "This left Jacob all alone in the camp, and a man came and wrestled with him until dawn began to break." And so in this moment, this was God himself. And what's crazy is, like, God doesn't come with a speech. He doesn't give him a blessing to start off. He comes ready to fight, which is, like, crazy because, like, we don't think of God as doing that, of, like, coming down and fighting. But in this moment, like, he comes to fight. And so the reason for this is because Jacob had been wrestling his whole life with his identity, with other people, and God's promises. And so God is here in this moment. He's like, all right, it's time to settle this once and for all. We're going to settle it right here. And now, the thing is God's love is not passive. It pursues after us, but he also allows us to wrestle with it. Because through the wrestling, we begin to understand more and more about him, and we begin to start to grow closer to him. God's not one of those gods that's like, hey, just figure it out. This is what I said. There's no questioning it. Nothing like that. God invites the questioning and the wrestling through your faith. And because of that, you start to grow closer and closer to him. And so I want to encourage you, don't be afraid to wrestle with God, to be able to wrestle with God's word and work through it in your spirit and in your mind and in your heart. Because a lot of times we become closer to God in the fight than we do in the quiet. We become closer to God in the fight than in the quiet. in those moments where we're like wrestling through things, when we're having that dialogue with God and being able to really just have that humility to be able to talk through things, rather than in those moments where it's like, hey, life's all good, I'm just going to chill here, I'm going to just be calm or whatever, and like I'm not going to have any dialogue with God. This is really random, and this was not in my message, but it made me think of it. There's a movie that came out like back when I was in youth ministry. It's called God's Not Dead. Maybe some of y'all have watched it. But so in one of these scenes, there's this guy that he's like just an awful guy, but he's like super rich. He's got everything according to the world. He's got the wife, the cars, the house, the big job, all this power. And then his mom is like, she's had this relationship with God, and she's like basically a saint. And so she's sitting here in a nursing home with Alzheimer's. And so she's sitting there, and he's like just kind of talking down to her. He was like, hey, you've given your life to God. Like, you are one of the most amazing people that I've ever met. You're basically a saint, or anything close to a saint that I have ever met. And look at you and look at me. You're sitting here in this nursing home. You got Alzheimer's. You can't even remember what happened yesterday. And I'm sitting here. I drove up in my nice fancy car. I live in my nice house. And like, it was such a cool scene. She like just stops, and it's like she gains a little bit of like cognitive ability for a second. And she says, you know what? The devil likes to take and put you in a cell, leave the door wide open, put the flat screen in it, make it all nice and comfortable for you to sit there and just chill and have a super easy and soft life until the moment that it shuts. And then you're stuck in there for eternity. And so I think it's like that a lot of times in our lives, of like a lot of times the enemy's biggest weapon is like comfort, of being able to say, hey, you're not going to go through anything. It's so cool. This is another random thing of like some of the people who like I feel like have some of the greatest and deepest relationships with God have went through the like hardest things. Like the people that like I think of like a Quentin Wilson or like one of those guys that it's like they went through a lot of things, an Amy Wimberly, like that they went through a lot of things, and they are like crazy with their faith. Like they will go up to talk to anybody about their faith and just be like, I mean, just anybody, anywhere. They have no like pressure at all. It's just like comes easy to them because of what God has taken them out of, the things that they've wrestled through in their life. And so how many of y'all know we become closer to God in the fight than in the quiet? And so it's in those moments where we're asking God, why? Why has this happened to me? Why is my friend paralyzed? Why does my sister continue to have seizures? Why is my brother battling with addiction? Why has my friend been killed in a senseless gunshot accident? Why does it feel like I can't get out of this cycle of sin? Why can't I get out of this depression that I've been battling for the past decade? And every time I think it's over, it creeps back into my life. Why do half of the amazing kids in my small group have one or more or both of their parents not want to be part of their life? Why does my brother keep on becoming homeless? And the list goes on when we come to those moments where we have this, just like we come to ourselves completely, where it's like this complete humility of asking like, God, why? Like you've had all these moments where it's like you have had all these promises and you're such a powerful God, but like hard things still happen. Tragedies still happen. And it's like those moments where you come to that place of asking God why. And so in Genesis 32:25, it says, when the man saw that he would not win the match, he touched Jacob's hip and wrenched it out of its socket. You see, the thing is Jacob had strength, but God had power. Jacob had strength, but God had power. Some of our deepest and most authentic prayers are in the moments when we're wrestling with God. With a touch, God disables him. With a touch, God disables him. Now, Jacob can't fight. He can't flee. He can only cling. He can't fight. He can't flee. He can only cling. And so in this moment, it says that Jacob just clings onto him. And so sometimes God will bring us to the end of ourselves so that we can finally see him with clarity. In 2 Corinthians 12:9, it says, "My grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness." And so it's in the battles of our life that reveals that we can't save ourselves. It's in the battles of our lives that realize we cannot save ourselves. We might have a ton of strength, but we don't have power. And strength can only go so far. And so in verse 26, it says, "Then the man said, 'Let me go, for the dawn is breaking.' But Jacob said, 'I will not let you go unless you bless me.' 'What's your name?' the man asked." I think that's so funny. "What's your name?" the man asked. He replied, "Jacob." "Your name will no longer be Jacob," the man told him. "From now on, you will be called Israel, because you have fought with God and with man and have won." And so in this moment, God asked Jacob what his name was, not because he didn't know Jacob's name. He asked it because he wanted Jacob to admit who he's been. He wanted to admit who he's been. And so Jacob means deceiver, but God gave him a new name, which was Israel, which meant God wrestler or God striver. And so when we begin to follow Jesus, we are made new and our old self is gone. In 2 Corinthians 5:17, it says, "Anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone and the new life has begun." And so I want to ask you tonight, are you still carrying the name of your past? Are you still carrying the name of your past? If you are, I challenge you to follow Jesus tonight and let him give you a new name. Let him give you a new identity. And so in Genesis 32:29-30, it goes on and it says, "Please tell me your name," Jacob said. "Why do you want to know my name?" the man asked. Sorry, I got off track. And so with that, you might be in a fight with your past. You might be in a fight with your identity. You might be in a fight with what happened to you, with what you're going through. But Jacob's story shows how God is not scared of your fight. He might actually be in it with you. You see, the thing is prayer isn't just meditating. It's spiritually wrestling. But when you hold on to God through the night, you come out transformed in the morning. When you hold on to God through the night, you come out transformed in the morning. If everyone, please stand with me tonight. See, the thing is Jacob went through this, and it said that God touched his hip and gave him this limp. He gave him this limp, and that limp was a reminder of where God met him. See, the thing is Jacob walked in prideful, but he limped out dependent on the power of God. God meets us in our struggle so that we can have power and we can walk through it with him, not depend on our own strength. And so tonight, I want you to ask these 3 questions. Am I ready to let go of my old name and let God give me a new name? What am I trying to control that God wants me to surrender to him? Am I willing to say, God, I'm not letting go until you bless me, even if it hurts?